All right, well, let's go over to Minnesota now, where Donald Trump's border czar Tom Homan has said that an immigration crackdown will end after 2 very high-profile months. And this follows widespread protests about deportations and the death of 2 American citizens who were shot and killed in the process of those protests. Now, Tom Homan called the operation overall a success. But joining me now to discuss this and more is Republican strategist and former spokesman for Ted Cruz, Ron Nehring. Ron, what do you make of the Trump administration's moves in Minnesota? The governor, Tim Walz, has certainly been furious about ICE's presence. Is there a danger that the optics of this are giving the left a win?
Well, let's start with basics. Every American deserves to be safe and feel safe in their own community. But there's a problem today, and that is that so many criminal aliens have been allowed into the country, and many of those people are committing crimes, that many of these neighborhoods have become unsafe. And we've also seen some of the measures of fraud that have been committed by those criminal elements in states like Minnesota and elsewhere as well. So we start with first principles. The Trump administration is going to continue to work hard to remove those people who are in the country illegally, who've committed violent crimes and other forms of crime, so to make our streets safe again, so to make our parks and our sidewalks and our neighborhoods safe once again. I think the Democrats will try to paint this as some type of win, but in the long term, the Democrats have to try to defend the fact that they are fundamentally opposed to a program to take people who are violent, criminals who are in the country illegally. We have the opportunity to send them out of the country where they will not make more Americans into victims of whatever crime they're committing. And this is the position which the Democratic Party finds itself in right now. They're reversing who the true victims are, which are the victims of these of criminal aliens who are committing crimes. Those are the people who the president's looking out for.
Yeah, and absolutely right, Ron. But one of the things that we're seeing here is that this fight over immigration is part of a much bigger discussion within the left and within the Democrats about what sort of party they are becoming. And I note that the Democrat socialist movement has really been taking off lately. We've seen it in New York and now in L.A. A radical Democrat socialist group has published a 40-page manifesto, which I think would frankly transform the city into a socialist hellhole. Among the things they want to do are ban Airbnbs, use golf courses for public housing, allow non-citizen immigrants to vote in local elections, and enforce a school curriculum that supports social justice. Well, I suspect it already kind of does that already in California. But, Ron, this is part of a bigger identity crisis on the left now, isn't it?
Sure, this is straight out of the Cuba plan, the Venezuela plan, the North Korea plan, and there's really no distinction between what you find in this radical document and what some people in the Democratic Party, like AOC or the new mayor of New York, are openly advocating for. This is a straight-on war on America's middle class. And just like in Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, whenever one of these socialist dictatorships take over, the first group that they target is the middle class, because that's where resistance comes from. These people want to confiscate all private housing in Los Angeles so that you don't get to own a home anymore. They're coming after your home equity, which is the single greatest generator of wealth for American families, and make everyone have to rent housing from the government. Well, you've seen how government-run housing in America works. It doesn't work. It creates slums and places which are deeply unsafe and destroys economic vitality. The problem with the Democratic Party today is the Democratic Party's immune system has broken down. Healthy parties can contain the radicals in their party, but the Democratic Party's immune system is broken, and so you literally have these radicals like AOC and Mamdani in New York. They get elected, and then the Democratic establishment comes right in behind them. There's no longer a line being drawn between the socialist wing of the Democratic Party and the rest. They become one and the same.
And Ron, I mean, just on this question of immigration, I've been fascinated by the evolution of the Democrats. I remember when Barack Obama was known as the deporter in chief, and when Hillary Clinton used to say that, you can't have people coming in illegally and taking work from Americans. How did that immune system break down? What happened to them? What broke in their brains? Was it Trump?
I think that we are in an age of polarization in the West. I think you've seen this in Europe, you're seeing this in the United States, but a healthy political party is able to isolate those fringes and continue to make the case to middle-class America. Whichever party wins the support of the middle class in this country gets to run the country. And the Democratic Party, this is fundamentally broken down through, I think, a variety of factors. I think social media is one of them. But at least in the Republican Party, that immune system is working working. When there are crazy people or anti-Semites or someone who pops up, the immune system works and isolates that and moves it out. That's not happening in the Democratic Party. Watch what happened with the mayor of New York, who the Democratic establishment opposed, but then once he got elected, they all fell into line. And that tells you the direction this party is going into in the midterms and in 2028.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And we're going to be talking a bit about Zohran Mamdani later in the program. But also, it's not just social media, too, Ron. It's regular media. There was a bombshell revelation, which I think kind of confirms things we already knew here this week, that investigative journalist Catherine Herridge, she revealed that when she was at CBS executives deliberately buried the Hunter Biden laptop story and ordered her to wait to talk about it until after the 2022 midterms, not just the 2020 election, in order to help the Democrats. Have a look at this.
I went to a lot of effort to get the cleanest copy of the laptop data, the same data that was provided to the FBI, because I didn't want to have any professional journalistic risk for CBS News. I wanted this thing to be totally locked down. When we did the story, we did it after the midterms. I argued against that because it was ready before the midterms. And my training is that you should always do the story when it's ready to go. You should not be dictated by the political cycle.
Ron, is it any wonder that Americans don't trust the mainstream media and that as a result, places like the Washington Post are having to lay off journalists by the score?
Look, every American deserves to have access to understand what the facts are, what's happening in the world around us. But CBS News, which has been representative of the legacy media, has not been doing a good job at that. 22 years ago, Dan Rather ran with a story that was completely made up and fabricated about memos that allegedly showed that President Bush, when he was in the Texas Air National Guard, got special treatment. And Dan Rather ran with it, and then he doubled down on it, and it turned out it was completely bogus, and it was easily refuted once they ran with the story. It looks like not much had changed at CBS News, but what has changed is that Americans' trust in the legacy media has only continued to drop because there are too many people involved in the media who have a particular political agenda, and they've stopped just sharing the truth or being objective or even trying to be balanced. And we saw that very cleanly in this Hunter Biden laptop story. I saw the same video that you just showed, and I'm just shocked that it was so blatant an attempt to move it past the midterm election to give the Democrats one less thing to worry about.
And Ron, it's not just, CBS, it's other great American institutions that have also become, frankly, corrupted. Harvard, as well, of course, we all know what's happened there. And the Pentagon this week has announced they're ending a lot of cooperation with that once great institution. Have a look at what Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had to say.
Ivy League as a whole has pervasive institutional bias and a lack of viewpoint diversity, including the coddling of toxic ideologies that undercuts our mission right here in this building. That is why in 2 weeks' time, components of all of our departments, Army, Navy, and Air Force, will evaluate all existing graduate programs for active duty service members at all Ivy League universities and other civilian universities.
Ron, we've only got 30 seconds here. Is the secretary wrong about this?
No, I don't think he's wrong at all. But what I think he's doing is he's sending a warning shot to all of the academic institutions that work with the Defense Department that they need to keep focused on pursuit of objective truth and leave the politics aside when it comes to working with our men and women in uniform.
Ron Nehring, love your clarity on these issues. Thank you so much for joining me on the U.S. Report.